We're here to discuss the Jubilee, and in general, the Sanhedrin that you were a part of. So why don't you give an introduction to the Sanhedrin?
Okay, one moment.
Amen.
Okay. About 12 years ago, I think it is. Please don't hold me on the date. A large number of rabbis, after about 10 years of work, finally got together and came up with the first ordained rabbi, according to the Rambam and several
Maimonides.
others. Maimonides. Thank you. You just have to keep correcting me because
I will.
Because I don't think in the the Hebrew terms are already in my English bank over here. So Maimonides, according to Maimonides, one of the great legal codifiers of the Jewish people, he the original ordination that from Sinai, from Moses on down, according to most opinions, stopped with the exile, or a late stage of the exile, at any rate.
The first or the second?
Second exile. However, that's questionable. We'll leave that aside. In any event, the question is how to restore the ordination, because there needs to be an official ordination, not what most people that are called rabbis today, that are adorned rabbis like me and several others. That's an for the moment ordination. That's like instead of
ad hoc, an
ad hoc ordination. However, the original ordination, the laying of the hands from the Sanhedrin, according to the Maimonides, one needs someone, a sage that everybody recognizes in Israel as being a wise and virtuous person and deserving of being the first ordained. And once all these sages agree on this person, then he becomes the first ordained, and he can then ordain others. Once you have this ordination is restored, which according to our opinion, ex post facto, not in initio, right? In the most backwards but backdoor type of way of doing things, we finally did get someone that, and he was approved by all the major rabbis and all the major sages in Israel, and that's Rabbi Moshe Haberstein, may his memory be blessed. And he further ordained other people. Okay.
What do you mean he was approved by all the rabbis in Israel?
Okay. This is a complicated thing, and if you go to the Sanhedrin website, there's much more detail, but I'll give it in brief. Basically, the committee worked for a long time, and there were several names of people that were highly recognized rabbis, and the person himself also has to agree to become the ordini. You can't just like a king has to accept the kingdom. You can't do it against his will.
Yes.
But in any event, surveys were sent out to people, to everybody that's registered in the Rabbanut,
all of the registered rabbis,
all the registered in the rabbinate, all the
registered in the Israeli rabbinate,
the dayanim, the judges, and also the ones that are sitting rabbis in cities and things like that, were sent a thing a survey basically with. Who they would accept and things like this. And Rabbi Moshe Haberstein's name and a couple other people became approved. And then we went. I wasn't on the committee at the time, to be honest, so it wasn't me. The committee.
Were you involved at all? At that point?
I became involved when I got the letter because I'm a registered judge. I passed the dayanut, so I became involved and what happened was this. So they at once the majority of most people didn't answer, to be honest. Okay. However, there's a law. A rule that if you don't answer, it's acceptance. You know, you abstain, it's considered acceptance. But over and above, they went to the major rabbis like Hamu Vadia Yosef, Tzatzal,
specifically went to them directly,
and Rav Elberstein, and Rav El Yeshiv, and Rav Shapira, and Rav Mordechai Eliyahu,
the top 10 rabbis of Israel.
Yeah, and they went and they asked, "Is he fit to be the first ordini?"
Wow.
Okay? And they all said, yeah, he's fit. Now, God, being God, knows how to confuse even the most wise people, and they didn't really understand the implications of what it means when you have a first ordinee that demands a Sanhedrin, basically. There's no mitzvah. There is a mitzvah to have courts and to build courts and things like this. But that demand comes once there's already ordained judges. So now once Rav Halberstein, the two people that were the primary movers for this was Rav Tzvi Idan, who was of the Beit Din of Rav Kaduri, and Rav Dov Levanoni, who's a major, who's a big rabbi in Chabad, big on the Beit Mikdash also. Both of them met through the Mikdash, so they learn Rambam Yomi every day. Rav Dov Levanoni is like near his hundreds now, and he's in an old folks' home, but he's still around, and I'm more happy to tell you the story of how he went to Rav Yeshiv, how they got in. Okay. He wasn't feeling well. He brought him his book, and he approved. He approved of Rav Halberstein and all the various Halberstam. Okay. Right? Okay. Sorry, I have trouble with those types of names.
Yes.
But all the details of all the stories and the video of some of these things is on the web, on the internet. And then the first convocation where Rav Dov Lebanoni and Rav Tzvi Idan, they were the first ordinees of Rav Halberstein. Rav Halberstein removed himself from the project afterwards, but he said, I'm not because of political pressure and stuff within the Jewish world, he said, I can't actively participate, but I'm not regretting the thing. So I'm keeping it. And he ordained Rav Dov Lebanoni and Rav Tzvi Idan, who then in Tiberia, 12 years ago, ordained there were 71 rabbis there.
Wow.
Ordained some major rabbis, some big rabbis, Rav Dov Lior, Rav Shmuel Eliyahu, who is the son of Rav Mordechai Eliyahu Tzatzal, was there. Rav Yaakov Peretz, be in health. And many other rabbis that the rabbi in Haifa.
Is there a list on the internet? Is there a list on the internet?
I'm not sure if there's a list on the internet, but Rav Steinsaltz, it was part of this. There's
and all 71 of them convened at the same time
in Tiberia. We've had 71 a few times. We had 71 not more than a couple months ago. Now it's hard for us to get 71 together.
Just 1 second. Your question?
So, what is the main value of the Sanhedrin? What can happen if you have a convened Sanhedrin, a recognized Sanhedrin in the future versus without?
Okay. First of all, it's an obligation upon Am Yisrael, on the nation of Israel, to have a Sanhedrin and have a high court.
Is it a commandment?
It is a commandment to have judges and marshals in every gate. The idea of a large Sanhedrin is demanded from that. It's like, to a certain extent, you aren't necessarily commanded to get married, but you have to have children, and to have children, you have to get married. Okay, so it's one of the. It's not one of the 613 mitzvot, but there are many mitzvot that are connected to the Sanhedrin that make it necessary, including the appointment of a king, including expanding the borders of Jerusalem, or the Beit HaMikdash, the Temple Mount. Including many other things that the Great Sanhedrin is necessary, and also the lower Sanhedrins receive their legitimacy through the Great Sanhedrin to a large extent. It's like the federal courts in America, the state court receives its legitimacy to a certain extent by virtue of it being underneath the Supreme Court. Now, technically, it's autonomous, just like a small Sanhedrin in a city or in a tribal inheritance is autonomous, but it's...
Wait. You can have different levels of Sanhedrins?
Of course.
Okay. I thought it was only one for the nation.
No, there is the Sanhedrin HaGedolah, the Great Sanhedrin, the large court, which is in Jerusalem. But in Jerusalem, there's also 3 other smaller courts before you even get to this one, of 23. And then in every city of more... Now, there's a question as to how many people you need, but whatever, let's say it's 120... main families, or 230.
Wow, it's tiny.
Or 230 families. There's a question what that means.
Still very tiny. What do you mean? There's a question. In other words, you mean it might be the tribes? Might be a chamulot, larger families?
It has to have a small Sanhedrin, of 23. Okay, the way it works now. First of all, I'm really giving a brief thing, but there's an idea in the Torah that you need to have. That you have the captain of the tens, captains of the 50s, captains of the hundreds, captains of the right. So if you have 10 families here, and they all appoint a head, a representative, right? Then there are, let's say there's 230 families. You now have a Sanhedrin of 23. Now you also have Sheven Tuvei, which the seven
elected leader elders.
Selectmen. That's what selectmen. The seven selectmen, which are the executors of the court. The court also, by the way, a judge is not like simply when you hear a case. A judge is a leader. It has to do. It's more. It's a little bit more than. It's more like a magistrate than a judge. I'm not exactly sure, but
I think I might have missed something important when you said if you have 230 families, then that would mean you'd have had a Sanhedrin of 23. Now, is there a connection between the word Sanhedrin? Does that mean a tenth or something?
No, Sanhedrin. Well, there's a question as to what the word means. Most scholars will tell you that Sanhedrin is a Greek word that was adopted by Hafsaka. Okay. I teach my kids at home. So Sanhedrin is most people say it's a Greek word that is borrowed by the Second Temple sages. However, there's the Bartanura, which is Rab Bartanura, which is a scholar who tries to show how it actually has a Hebrew root, and everything is connected and interconnected, and God plays all sorts of games with stuff and word games. We don't need to really get into it, but it's not connected to 10.
Okay.
That was just court. Shoftim and Shotrim, B'kol Sha'arecha is the pasuk. Judges.
From where is that?
And
you remember
in Devarim.
In the book of Deuteronomy.
In the book of Deuteronomy.
Chapter approximately.
I'd have to look.
We'll
I'll look it up.
Because I'll say the wrong one.
Okay.
Go
on.
Yeah, that's why you got Google. I don't need to know things anymore. So in all your gates, and then there's the concept of when things become difficult, you go to those appointed in Jerusalem, and then our oral tradition has an entire setup of a system of how you go from one court to the next court until you get to the final court things to determine the law. But then it gets shot back down, except for several things that are decided by only the Sanhedrin, the large Sanhedrin, the Sanhedrin Gedolah. Usually when you just say Sanhedrin, the reference is to the Sanhedrin Gedolah, the great Sanhedrin. But that's actually technically a misnomer, because really it should be the lower Sanhedrin that should be the Stam.
So if I get what you're saying, the Sanhedrin would cut across all of all Jews in an area, versus perhaps is it the current way that if you were part of a certain rabbi's stream, then you present issues for resolution within that. Of course, they're not binding from a Israeli law standpoint. Is that where we're getting to?
That's where it should be. That's the end. That's what it's supposed to be. Okay. Now, in the First Temple period, and also in the Second Temple period, it was mainly based on locality. It could technically not necessarily be with modern technology and communications and tachbura, transportation. You don't necessarily. It may not necessarily have to be based on locality, though I tend to move towards the idea that it should be. Yeah. However, to give fair play for the other people that think that it doesn't necessarily have to be, you could be connected to this one rabbi in this one group, this one tribe within the family of Jewish tribes, and he sits on the large Sanhedrin, or he is a representative of the large Sanhedrin. So it still would work on the same tiered system, but on a slightly less geographically oriented system. What we have now is basically an exile mode, and even in the exile, we actually had a much better system sometimes, such as the Court of the Four Lands, which was a type of exile Sanhedrin, and even the Rambam and several other places in Halacha talk about a Sanhedrin in exile, which in the Mishnah talks about it, and I really think that that's what they're referring to, and I think in Bavel there was something. It has now a Sanhedrin that's not sitting on the Temple Mount is limited in its
jurisdiction,
samchut, authority, what it's allowed to do, as far as the death penalties, as far as making certain proclamations. But even outside of the thing, it's an idea of unity without uniformity, right? The idea of Jewish unity is not about uniformity. It's about common goal and unity, right? And that's the idea of the Sanhedrin, which is supposed to be on the Temple Mount, which is the place of unity, and not only for the Jewish people, but for the entire world, because that's the focus. You know, all the world is supposed to come, so to speak, and pray towards the Temple Mount. And then Shlomo Melech says, Dafka, Dafka, the non-Jews answer their prayers. Jews, if it's appropriate, answer them. Right? If you read the thing, and it's a very interesting thing, and the commentators ask why, and they answer because, well, God. We need to point out that God is the one in charge, and when a non-Jew who's not automatically loyal to the Jewish God, when he gets his prayers answered, he's going to say, "Oh, the Jewish God's got it." Where a Jew, he's automatically loyal, so he knows if it has to do with whether you're a son or a cousin, right? The son, he's like, you're my father. All right, you're my father. But as an analogy.
Getting back to our content here, since Rabbis Edan and Levanoni and Halberstam, first ordained those first 71 rabbis for the Sanhedrin, have there been more ordinations since then?
There are about 250 rabbis that have been ordained or more. You really have to talk to the secretary of the Sanhedrin, Dov Stein, that knows. We occasionally have large convocations. Every week there's a committee of about 20 rabbis, 23 rabbis. We try for 23. We don't. It's all volunteer. We get no money. And in fact, we need to learn how to raise money because it's hard for us to do a lot of projects. But we meet every week on Wednesday. Now we're meeting on Mount Zion.